So my name is Lauren Barrett, and I am a career coach at the Career Center here on the Homewood campus. Who knows where the Career Center is? Yeah. Where is it? Say it together. Garland, right? Okay. So we know where the Career Center is. So we're hosting these foundational labs. Has anybody attended a foundational lab before in the fall? No? Okay, so the foundational labs are geared towards giving you foundational information about career development. So the series of them have to do with resumes and cover letters. We have an interviewing basics, a career exploration, networking. We're coming up with an offer negotiation lab coming in the spring. So these are essentially primers on what you need to know as a foundation for moving forward with these pieces. So we're going to start tonight by talking about resumes and cover letters. So could we run around the room and maybe just introduce yourself, name, year, and if you brought your resume, a copy of your resume, just give me an indicator. Could you maybe get us started? First year? Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Maybe in the back there.
Yeah, I'm Devin Hill. I'm a sophomore for my resume.
Awesome. Great.
My name is Jessup John. I'm also a sophomore. I need to update my resume.
Okay. All right.
I am Exlo, a freshman. I have
Okay. Awesome.
I'm Daniela. I'm a freshman, and my resume is on my laptop.
Sure.
I'm Adrian. I'm also a freshman, and my resume is also on my laptop.
Okay.
I'm Valerie.
Okay. Great. Okay. 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 That's okay. No worries. I'm just trying to get a read.
I'm Daniel, I'm a sophomore, and like copy of mine.
Okay. That's all right. We welcome old resumes. Okay. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a freshman.
Okay.
I'm Sophia. I'm also a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a graduate student.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
I'm Gina. I'm a junior, and I have one.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm Jessie. I'm a freshman, and I did 3.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm Nina. I'm a freshman,
Okay. Great.
I'm Lana. I'm a freshman, and I have it on resume.
Awesome. Great. And someone just joined us, so we'll let her get signed in and then we'll, But, the majority of everybody is getting started on resume development. That's great. Wonderful. We have some outdated resumes, which is good too. We're coming to update. We have some folks who are using resumes for internships and then some who are leveraging them for something different, a full-time job maybe. So, hello, welcome. So lots of different types of resumes. The information that we're going to share here tonight is big picture, and then we're going to dig in a little bit, and then you guys are going to have an opportunity to work on your resumes. So this is going to be high level, and then we can get specific. Okay, so I'm going to dance around this side. Oh, I guess I can do it this way. Did that work? No. So sorry, technical glitch. Oh. There's a first time for everything fun. So there it is. Okay, so cover letter versus resume is sort of the first piece that we're going to talk about. And cover letters are akin to the preview of coming attractions, right? What's in a cover letter? Anybody know? Anybody heard of a cover letter? Anybody have a cover letter? Yeah, a couple folks. Okay, so cover letters often act as that preview of coming attractions. Hey, I'm interested. Hey, here's information about me. Here's information that connects me to things that are interesting for you. And then the resume digs deeper into that. It presents information that an employer would find relevant. So if you were looking at a job description and you wanted to provide an employer with relevant information in the lens of your resume, what kind of information would you think would be important? Just like big picture. What would an employer want to know? Nothing? Background, great, right? Digs a little bit deeper. Anybody else? Information that would be interesting to an employer? Qualifications, skills, definitely. Experiences, right, that relate to that specific position. So when you're drafting cover letters and resumes, you're looking really, really intentionally at what am I putting in that's going to make an employer attracted to me, or what lines me up appropriately with this opportunity. There might be key language. We'll go a little bit deeper into what that looks like. But essentially, they're serving different functions. One is serving as a preview of coming attractions, and then one is serving as the feature film. It's going to say all the things that make you a good candidate for that position, whereas the preview, right, you only show a little snapshot, you only show a little clip. And that's to entice you to go to see the movie, right? So a strong preview of coming attractions can mean that an employer is going to see the feature film. And essentially that means look at you more closely as a candidate. So we're going to talk about both of these documents today. Okay, so in your resume and cover letter, you want to translate your experiences into an employer's language. What do you think that means? Does anybody have an idea, or anybody who's written a resume for a particular job had that experience of, no? Okay, we're gonna be a quiet group. It's all right. I'm gonna make you guys participate. So if you were gonna identify your most important skills for an employer, would it look exactly the same as the job description that you fulfilled at your current job and what you put on your resume? Would it be exactly the same bullet point? I see some heads shaking no. Why? You'd want to put relevant information, and you'd also want to identify the most important skills and tasks from that position. So if you have a position, let's say, for example, as a student ambassador at the Career Center, you are, your job description might say answering the phone, or, greeting employers, or all of the different functions that our student ambassadors do. But when you frame that skill for an employer, you might be framing it as the expertise in communications, or your ability to solve problems. You're translating your experiences that you've had in different positions or experiences into language that an employer can relate to. And sometimes it doesn't always look exactly like it should. Anybody ever think to themselves, oh, how can I tell an employer about how I'm a good problem solver? Anybody ever had that experience writing a resume? Like, how do I say that without saying to an employer, I'm a really good problem solver? So we have to illustrate it. We have to take skills and experiences from our previous positions and turn it into language that they can understand. You want to identify that your experiences that relate. So certainly relevant experience is key. A lot of folks in some of their resume samples, you'll see have a relevant experience section on their resume, and then an additional experience section. So you might have 2 research positions that are relevant to your field of study, and then you might have an on-campus job that supports that you are a leader in your student community, that you work while going to school, that you want an employer to know about and has important transferable skills, but it might not be exactly related to the field of study. So separating out your experiences can be an effective strategy for tackling that. You want to use their language to show your accomplishments. What's that mean? Use their language. Anybody ever read a job description that has words like collaborate, innovate, create, right? Yeah, so that's their language. That's the language of an employer. Google, for example, right? Google's a company that loves innovation, right? So in their job description, I would bet you if we pulled up a Google job description, somewhere in their listing, they would use that word innovate, because that's the brand of that company. That's the message they're trying to put forward. So in using their language to show your accomplishments, you might find a project where you had to do something different or create something new. And you might pull their language and plug it into your resume and say, you know, innovated or created, you know, something along those lines that helps to reflect, you know, what Google's all about, and you're using that branding on your resume. So that's a skill that you have to practice and then tailor with each resume to really pinpoint what is an employer looking for and how do you meet that need? What do you have that they would find to be important? You want to tell your story. What does that mean? How do you tell a story on a resume or a cover letter? Nobody? Anybody heard of a chronological resume? Chronological? Yeah, so in time sequence, so you can showcase your information in chronological order, like here's the most recent experience and then go backwards. But you can also showcase your information in other ways. You might see a functional resume example in different places. If you've looked at different types of resumes, you might see people organize their resumes by skill that they have. So instead of having a chronological sequence of job experiences, they might showcase all of their skills having to do with customer service from any job they've had. And then changing the way you organize the resume changes the way an employer reads your story. So it might be you want to show chronological experience. Can anybody think of a particular field where showing consistent chronological experience would be important? No. STEM, right? STEM fields. Yeah, this is fine. STEM research, right? Showing consistent development in that field so that an employer can see, here's the chronological order of these experiences. If you're like myself, I was an English major and then got a master's in counseling and then was kind of all over the place. You sometimes need to frame your experiences differently. You need to think about, okay, how do I say that I have this set of skills that's been developed from all these different experiences I've had? And then that's where a different approach to the resume can be helpful to you. But just so you know, as you're, you know, exploring all of these things, telling your story is a key component. And then answering so what? So what's important about, you know, what's important about you? What makes you stand out? What makes you special? Amongst all of the resumes that an HR department will read, what's going to make you glow, if you will. So in writing your resume bullets, and when I say resume bullets, does everybody know what I'm talking about? The descriptive portions that go underneath your specific jobs. So if you have your job up or your resume up, does anybody have their resume up? Yes, okay. So you have a job listing, right? A position that you've held, maybe where it was and when you held it, right? And then underneath, you probably have a description of that position, right? And what kind of things did you include in that description of your position? That's awesome, right? So using language that meets an employer to describe things that you've done in that experience. So the STAR method is a great way to get started writing those bullet points if you're not sure what to put in them. So for example, the S in STAR stands for the situation or the skill. What is it that you want an employer to know? So that very first bullet point you said coordinate. Coordinate, correct? Or was it collaborate? Collaborate. Okay, so you want an employer to know that you can collaborate with other people, with a team. So you start off with that skill, and then you lead into the task. You collaborated to do what? Or for what purpose? Why did you collaborate? The action that you took references specifically what you did within that role. So you might have collaborated with a team, but your role was to use MATLAB to, you know, solve this particular type of problem, or your role was to organize the student organization logistics for the event. And then the result could be the completion of a research study. It could be a successful event, an event that drew 200 people. It could be any number of things. But when you're thinking about writing those bullet points, instead of thinking job description, right? You want to think, what are the skills that I want to showcase to this employer? So when they scan down that side column of your resume, the very first verbs that they're seeing are those action-oriented verbs that describe you. So in seeing that, they're seeing she's a collaborator, right? She collaborated to solve this type of problem. There are lots of really, really strong resume verbs. Anybody ever explored resume verbs? No? Right? It's kind of fun if you Google strong resume verbs. We also have a list on Handshake in the resume and cover letter subsection of the resources. There's a document that details resumes and cover letters, has a lot of this same information, and it provides a list of strong resume verbs. So you can use that sheet to explore, okay, what is it that I really did in this position? Maybe you collaborated, maybe you coordinated, maybe you analyzed, maybe you created or explored. So verbs that really work to describe the situation or the skill that you want an employer to know about. And we can pass around. You guys might have to share because I only have a couple. I can send these documents to everybody in the listing after this presentation. They're also on the Handshake event. If you go to the Handshake event, you want to bring it up on your computer. Welcome. Full house tonight. Okay. Does anybody have questions about STAR? Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. So your goal would be to create a seamless sentence, right? That incorporates all of these things, right? Like collaborated with a team of 4 to complete research in the area of blank that was published in blank, right? That would be the dream sentence, but doesn't always work that way. If you find that you need to break it down a little bit more, that's completely fine. It can reserve space on your resume. Reserve, that's not the word I was looking for. It can take up space on your resume, right, by breaking it down. But if you feel like you need more than one bullet point to fully articulate, like maybe you did intensive research and then you went to a conference to present it and you're like, I want to showcase these 2 different skill sets. I, researched and implemented this strategy and then I presented it to my peers or to a conference. Absolutely. Think about the skills that you want to showcase and then write your bullet points to tailor to that. Was there another question over here? Yeah.
How are the tasks what you're supposed to do at that job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a good question, the difference between tasks and actions. So the task is what you're supposed to be doing, right? So maybe you're supposed to be building I'm going to try it, Baja car, this car. Anybody in here a mechanical engineering student? No, nobody's a mechanical engineering student. I just read this on someone's resume today. They built a off-road car for a Baja competition, it's called. So maybe that's the task, right? But maybe the action that you did within that task is something more specific. It's something that you would want to highlight that you have a particular skill set in. So this is a lot of times where I like to plug in what I used to complete it. So if I used a piece of technology, if I had to outreach to an organization, if I had to, find a workaround. So the action is very much focused on what you did, whereas the task might be more general. The task might be to do the group research project, but your action within that task might be to, write the procedures section of the report, for example. That's good questions. Any other questions about STAR? We'll have a chance to practice writing STAR bullet points a little bit later in the presentation, so cool. Okay, so here's a slide detailing exactly what is on this handout that I passed to you, but using the STAR on your resume. So increase client base and advise clients on mergers. Same job task using the STAR method. Advise clients on mergers and acquisitions of business segments ranging from 500,000 to 1.2 million, resulting in 95% customer satisfaction and 9 new client referrals. So what's the difference, really? Does an employer get a clear picture using just the task description? that you increase the client base and advise clients on mergers. They don't really get a clear picture of that, right? I once said to a student who was talking about managing others, I said, there's a really big difference between saying you managed 5 people and managed 50 people. So if you just say you managed people, there's not a lot of information that they could draw on from that. But if you say, I managed X number of people, or I added value to this task that resulted in these things, you can really get an employer to understand the scope of practice for yourself. By giving them more detailed information, they can better understand you and your story, right? When we give really general information, we don't tell a very like detail-oriented, strong story. But when we give a bigger picture and we use details, we can really get a sense of, you know, what you did in that role. So thinking about your student organizations, you might say like, oh, I, volunteered for this event. Well, instead of just saying volunteered for this event, think really specifically when you volunteered, what did you do that resulted in what impact? Because there's always something, right? You served a purpose in that. You weren't just floating around being there, right? You had a purpose for being there, and your purpose and actions resulted in some kind of outcome, in a contribution. And so that's what an employer is excited to know. They want to know about that. Okay, so let's talk layout of resume format. So everybody who has a resume draft with them, go ahead and bring it up on your computer screen or pull out your piece of paper, but just have it visually in front of you. So we're gonna go through this step by step, not in too great detail because I want you guys to get a chance to work on yours, but we're gonna think about the structure and layout of each of these important subsections. So on your resume, you always want your contact information, right? Right at the top, you clear and easy. Cleasy can be the new word that I just invented for that. Quote it right now. And so that's the showcasing information. And then why would it be relevant to have your education next on your resume? Why, as college students, would you want to showcase your education information first? Because you're a student. It's your bargaining chip, right? Your degree holds so much value. It's super significant. So having your degree information showcased at the top of your resume means to say, this is, who I am in my educational experience. This is what I'm studying. This is what I'm working towards. And for many people applying for internships and full-time positions, that's the critical information. If your position has a degree gateway, right? If they're looking for a graduate or a sophomore or someone with X number of years of experience, your education information is going to hold that for an employer right away. You can see high school information on this one. When do you think we should like phase out high school information? From our first year students. When do you think like you should start to phase out high school? Ooh, when you have enough other stuff to write on your resume. So let's backwards map that. What should you be doing now? Doing stuff to put on your resume, right? So ideally after your first year of college, we're phasing out all of your high school information. Like that was a really big part of your picture. And I encourage you all to keep a copy of that resume, screenshot it, save it as a PDF and be like, this is where I was, this is awesome. And now your resume is updated and upgraded to be Johns Hopkins resume. So employers are going to be most interested in things that you're doing currently right now at this institution. The caveat to that would be if you had research experience after high school graduation, or you took a gap year between high school and college and there was important information to showcase in there, I would say there are some ways that I would recommend maybe including research experience. But I think those are more case to case. And as a general rule, employers want to know what you're doing right now. They want to see that you're involved and active in the community as it stands. So getting involved, I know that everyone's been saying to you this year, first year students, like join an organization, get involved, get involved. This is where that showcase of that information really works to help you. You can see we have in this layout, I really recommend this layout. It's pretty standardized, but it's easy for everybody to find the information they want. You got the institution, where it is, what you did there, and when you did it. And then you have details about it. So if you have honors or awards, if you have a minor, if you want to insert your relevant coursework into your education section, it can be appropriate in that place. In some cases, you might have more relevant coursework than could fit right there. And so, you know, being a little flexible, but in general, this is the type of information that you want to include in the education section. You can see right here, the GPA information. This C, cumulative GPA, 3.65. So if you are putting your GPA, make sure you're putting your cumulative GPA. Don't just put your within major GPA. It's important for transparency reasons, right? So an employer can see the big picture GPA. Yeah. Any questions about education? Yeah. Oh, yes. Sure. It's true. Below 3, I would hold on it. If an employer has a GPA requirement, which you'll see on Handshake, some people input a GPA requirement, then you have to put your GPA on your resume to be considered as a candidate. In general, if it's below 3, I wouldn't put it on your standard resume and be passing it around. Not that that's something, you know, GPA I have so many feelings about, but it's an important factor in some decision-making processes. So really read your job description and determine, is this employer going to consider me if I don't put my GPA on my resume? Are they really looking for it? And they'll say a lot of times in the job description or in the post, like GPA required, particularly on Handshake, maybe not on other job applications. Good question. So that I would say you choose which one you want to put on and then qualify it. Just say weighted or unweighted, but just make sure that you indicate which one it is for transparency. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say a lot of that high school style information that includes that top 5 or class rank or that kind of thing, don't worry about any of that. I don't find that it's a relevant decision-making factor for any employer. And also that high school information is getting filtered off now anyway. So again, take a screenshot, save a PDF, like you worked hard for it, you're proud of it, save a copy, but now think like Hopkins moving forward. So don't stress about any of those kinds of harder to express factors. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm sorry? So med school applications will ask specifically for your transcript information in another place. So I would say that would be a good referencing. Pre-Professional Advising has a resume sample on their website, and that would be a good reference to see, is that a trend? I don't observe it to be too much of a trend because they're collecting transcript information in other ways. So they're going to be able to see that really transparently. Whereas an industry applicant, you know, putting out your GPA is saying like, here's how I'm representing myself without sending a transcript. Yeah. All right. Okay, so the work and research experiences, this is where we dig into what is it that you're doing. This is where those star bullet points come in. So you can see again, that same format, Johns Hopkins University, where you worked, the institution, where it is, what you did there, and when you did it. So the peer assistant role in June 2015 to present. So you can see these really rich descriptions of what this person did in their role, leading a team of 5 student workers advertising career-related programming by developing and disseminating weekly newsletter to approximately 7,000 undergraduate and graduate students. Pretty robust description, right? Says a lot about this person's communication skills, about their leadership skills, about the scope and importance of the work that they did. Again, they were 7,000 people, not 7, you know, it's a big widely distributed newsletter. So really being able to provide scope to the bigger picture. Down below, we have another experience, Banana Republic, sales associate, 2012 to 2014. What do you think about the job descriptions for this one? Do you think that they're strong, that they do a good job? Anybody? No? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Led a team of sales associates that designed innovative back-to-school promotion flyer using Photoshop Pro, distributed in print and social media. Yeah, it's a really good foundation description about the task and what you had to do, but maybe there's a way to optimize. Maybe the result is, you know, the number of impressions or what that campaign generated. There may be some kind of follow-up that better illustrates, you know, what the result of that was. There may not be. You might not always have that data. That's okay. You can see this person earned the Star Employee Award for June 2013 for highest sales percentage. So they're showcasing, you know, that they have a leadership quality within this organization. They might not be too worried about reporting numbers for the print and social media. But if you were going for a social media management position, reporting the information on the analytics might be really, really valuable and relevant. So keeping data on the projects that you do, and that's the other piece about this work and research experiences. As soon as you finish an experience or even while you're in it, write down what you did. Anybody ever like try to go back and update their resume and be like, oh my gosh, what did I do in that job? Anybody ever had that experience? You're like, I know that I did really important things, but I can't remember how many people were in my group or which program we used to do what. Take notes, take detailed notes and populate them into your resume. Because even if they're not those perfect star bullet points, you'll at least have information to recall about the specifics that you could provide to an employer. So you can see work and research kind of laid out in the similar way of education. Yeah. Good question. So what I would do in that case is, let's say you had two different roles at the Career Center, right? You were the peer assistant and then you were a marketing intern one semester. So we would have the greater listing of Johns Hopkins University Career Center, the peer assistant dates and description, and then the bullet points. And then in the same font as peer assistant, I would put the second role and then the dates that you accomplished that and the description of that position. So you don't have to create a whole new housing for the organization if it's within the same organization. This got specific, right? Johns Hopkins University Career Center. So if you work at the Career Center and at the fitness center, you would, or the recreation center, you would want to have two separate categories, right? To say, I work at the Ralph S. O'Connor Recreation Center and then the Johns Hopkins University Career Center. So separating out the Hopkins institutions, but yeah. It's a great question. So the chronological, I would say for most folks in here, the chronological is going to be the best. So taking your relevant experiences and doing reverse chronological order. So your most current experience is showcased first and then in descending order from there. A lot of people like to separate their relevant experience and their additional experience. So relevant experience for a, you know, someone who's applying for social media positions might be their social media internship. Additional positions might be that they worked at the Career Center as a student ambassador, right? So there are ways to frame your resume to showcase relevant and additional, but you got to look at your experiences as a whole and say, all right, where do these things belong? Where do they hold the most value? Mm-hmm.
What if your work is freelance or like not under a company, but you still got paid for it?
So I would call that self-employed, maybe. We should look at that more specifically because that can get into a little bit of detail-oriented pieces. Or you might have independent projects as a section and then be able to organize them in that way. but it's a little bit more specific. Yeah. It's valuable real estate, right? It's valuable real estate. So you really want to think when you're crafting a resume, what's the most important information that this employer would want to know? So it might be that there are sacrifices in one section in order to accommodate more information in another section. I like to keep a working copy of my resume that has all my information. And then when I'm applying for a position, I look at that big document and I say, all right, what would be the most important or most relevant? What could I pull from this job description, you know, that a person would want to know about my experiences? And then you can kind of tailor each time. And each of your resumes should be really tailored. They should be tailored to the employer. It takes a lot of time. Applying for a job is like another class. It really is. It's that much time and energy and effort, but the outcome is worth the effort that you put in, right? So you're going to get out of this as much as you put in. So treating career development like it's not like a class, but it's something that you put that energy and effort into. And on the other side, you see that outcome. So taking the time to tailor your resume to that particular internship, you know, write a specific cover letter can mean the difference between, you know, being an okay application and being a stellar application. So in terms of detail, right, what to include and what not to include, I think it all lies in what that employer is looking for and what you want to showcase to them. Cool. All right. Okay, then we get into extracurricular activities. Who's involved in extracurricular activities? Yay, good news. Okay, so this is important information to have on your resume, especially for my first year students and, you know, maybe sophomores in the room who are building resumes. Maybe you haven't had tons and tons of experience in your field yet. You want to showcase your transferable skill set. And a great way to do that is through the student leadership and volunteer section. So you can see, again, we're following that same format in putting out information. And the technical skills section is the one I want to focus on. Let's focus on that. Who has a skills section on their resume? Yeah, a couple folks. Why would this be particularly helpful to an employer? Yeah. Absolutely. See if your skill set matches the position they're looking for. So if you showcase all of your skills in this little section, an employer can scan to that and say, yeah, they've got what I'm looking for. It also does the work for you of making sure that your keywords appear on applicant tracking software filters. Applicant tracking software is something that bigger companies put resumes through. So when you submit an application, it may go through an ATS system that filters for specific keywords. It may, right? If you hand your resume to someone in a networking event, it's not going to do that, which is great. But if you send it through maybe a big job portal, it may go through an applicant tracking system in which it would be seeking specific language. So that's where if they're asking for specific skill sets, like you must have experience using, you know, Python and Java, you get to make sure that Python and Java appear on your resume in that technical skills section or in that general skills section. We can talk about the individualized skills sections for specific industries as we progress and as we work a little bit individual. I want to get through the rest of the general information so we can take a closer look at you guys. But this section can do an awful lot of work for you in being able to identify right off the bat, here's the set of technical skills that I have to showcase. You can see that you can qualify them, right? So Spanish intermediate, let's say SPSS, I'm very much a novice, right? Novice SPSS user. So I would put novice in parentheses behind that. So it's okay to say that you have an emerging skill in a specific area as long as you qualify it. And you do that so you don't find yourself in a job interview and they say, tell me about your, you know, most recent Python project. And you're like, oh no, I don't know. I am learning it, because that would be kind of awkward, right? If you had said, I know this skill. But if you say, I'm learning it on your resume, then they bring you in, they have that understanding, they know that expectation. Okay, So we're going to move on to cover letter, and we're going to go through pretty briefly. Individualize each cover letter. So cover letters are things that people oftentimes say, I'm just going to make a general draft and tweak it. You might spend more time tweaking your general draft and trying to make it work than just, you know, crafting a specific cover letter. So there are some things that are going to stay the same every single time, right? Like your introduction of yourself, maybe that ending where it says, you know, please, I'd be happy to follow up with you at X, Y, and Z, or I'm looking forward to the opportunity with your company. There might be a couple standardized pieces, but for the most part, you're going to individualize each one and you're going to target to a specific job or employer. The more energy and effort you put into this, the more an employer can read that on the other side. So be positive, natural, direct, and interesting, and avoid being repetitious of your resume. So a cover letter isn't necessarily the restatement of a resume, but it's an opportunity to, if your resume is 2 dimensions, you get to make your cover letter 3-dimensional, and you get to say, here's why I'm passionate about this. A resume can't really do that, right? It's more of that like general kind of bullet point information, and it's hard to convey passion or interest in the resume. But a cover letter lets you bridge your interest with that particular position. It lets you draw parallels that an employer might not see right away. So avoid being specifically repetitious of items on your resume, and be brief, be concise. These should be maybe 1/2 to 3/4 of a page at most. So they're not super long documents. They're not personal statements. They're not essays. They are cover letters to, you know, the real meat, which is your resume. And always proofread. Always proofread. I would say that too about resumes. I found an error on a resume today with a student who had already sent out his resume. Always proofread or run it through spell check. But this can be particularly important in the cover letter. You want to say the word that you mean, not the word that spell check thinks you mean. So. Okay, so common hiring manager complaints. Anybody have a guess what they might be? Nope. Not tailoring resume, right? If they get a standard resume that clearly hasn't been, you know, person hasn't taken the time to look at the job description and match the information intentionally, they just get a flat resume. Not highlighting clubs, organizations, class projects, or volunteer experiences. These are important to employers who are hiring college students. They want to see your level of involvement. They want to see how you manage your time and tasks. And this, organizations, class projects, and volunteer experiences, that tells that story for an employer. Grammatical errors, my non-proofreaders, all the time, grammatical errors. Inappropriate email addresses. Who has their JHU email address on their resume? Okay, everyone should have their JHU email address on their resume. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely look to see, I think that the alumni office, if you email them post-graduation, will issue you an alumni email address that you could choose to put on. When you're a senior, if you choose to change over to like a professional Gmail account or a professional email, if you know that that's going to be your primary method of correspondence and it's a professional account that has your name, right? What they're trying to avoid is those high school email addresses that maybe not relevant to not a clear, unique identifier as to who you are. But in putting your JHU, your professional email address, this is a really easy way to make an employer or hiring manager happy by not putting an inappropriate or hard to decode email address. Like if it's got a lot of L's and ones, you know, it's hard to see the difference. Bullets that are too vague. So bullets that aren't specific enough, bullets that don't follow that STAR method. Generic and self-focused objective statements. So they don't want to see generic. They want to see individualized. They want to get that picture of the story that you're telling. Oh dear. Okay, so contact information. So, oh my gosh, why did it go? Ah. Last slide, previous, does that say previous? Thank you. Okay, so this is how to get in touch with us for further information. I'm going to leave this slide up. But what I want to do now is have you guys take a few minutes processing the information that was shared and take a look at your resume and see where are you meeting things, right? Where are you meeting the qualifications that we've kind of put forward? And then where do you have gaps? Where are there things that you have questions about? And then after you take a couple of minutes, maybe turn to the person next to you and share your resume and take a look, see what's up. Does that sound good? And I can kind of walk around now and answer some individual questions if there are specific questions. Ian and Jason, feel free at this point, if you have individual questions, to type them into the chat window and we can help to answer them. But yeah, sound like a good plan? Okay.
And if anyone didn't get the chance to sign in on this computer, you can use this time to also come up and do that. There are 24 of you in here and only 23.
Peer assistance. Take a look at their resumes. Thank you. I was like, peer assistance. Another resource that's available to you that Julie just reminded me of is the Peer Advisor Resume Review. Who knows about our Peer Advisor program at the Career Center? Yeah? One person. Oh, what? All right. So we have a peer advising program, which is an opportunity for you to attend drop-ins during the day at the Career Center and have one of our peer advisors go through your resume specifically, look for formatting and content issues, and get a little bit more of an in-depth look. Those are drop-in times and they are first come, first serve. There are times in the semester where they're busier than others. And then there are times where, you know, you might find a little bit of flexibility. So we want to meet you where you are. Those are offered 5 days a week from 11 to 3. 11 to 3. And this semester, stay tuned on Handshake because we're going to be offering some evening drop-in hours with our peer advisors. They'll be posted soon, so you'll be able to see the evening hours and be able to drop in and meet with a peer advisor. And those locations will be posted on the Handshake event. But in the event that you find it difficult to come to a Career Coaches on Campus drop-in time, or you can't make it to that foundational lab, but you really wanted that feedback, the peer advising crew is a wonderful resource for you to be able to use. They will start back up with the start of the semester. Right now, if you look on Handshake for Career Coaches on Campus events, those are the one-on-one drop-in times with the career coaches. So myself and my team. Yes. Yeah, definitely. You can say it into my...
So I'd always recommend getting your resume looked at no matter what. Just have someone else look at it, especially if they don't know, if they study English and you're STEM or something, have them look at it, see if they might not know like the lingo or the exact like codes or whatever you're using, but they can see if it makes sense to them or if you're coming across like actually saying something. And just know you're gonna get a different opinion from every different person you get a resume review from, and then you can start kind of picking and choosing what you think is best. And well, I don't know if this is bad. Looking online and looking at examples is not a bad thing. Just don't copy them verbatim, but they can kind of jumpstart you if you're really stuck.
Absolutely. Please forgive me for not introducing my colleagues. This is Julie Sanchez. Julie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Julie Sanchez. I'm the Employer Outreach Coordinator. So I specifically work with employers when they come onto campus to do all the logistics, and I coordinate with all their recruiters and everything like that. So one thing I do want to say that a recruiter told me that I thought was very interesting is as far as getting involved, definitely get involved, do stuff on campus, but recruiters don't want to see you involved in 5 different things. So you can't do 5 different things well. Like there's no way. They want to see like maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3, but I'd say like 1 or 2 things that you really get into and you show your devotion to it and that that's your passion kind of thing. They really don't want to see like 5, 6 plus. Like I've seen some crazy resumes. Like I don't know how people find time to do these things, but just again, you can't do 5 different things well. So really just find what you're passionate about it and really dig into it.
So I'm Taylor Varaka. I'm the peer advisor manager. So I trained the peer advisors that you will be seeing in these drop-in hours. So I can tell you that they are all very knowledgeable. One thing I wanted to add was be wary of templates, especially like Microsoft Word has a bunch of resume templates, I'm pretty sure. Most often they do not help you maximize your space efficiently. And if you're trying to fit things into a template, it just doesn't work. So create your own on Microsoft Word, stick to something like the examples that we have here, and that'll allow you to keep as much relevant information in your resume as possible.
Good tips. Good tips. Any other thoughts about resumes? Things you've heard? Anybody have any resume rumors that we can debunk? Oh, resume rumors. No? Yeah, no, I know. It's catchy. Yeah. Sure. Yes. So entry level, first year resume, like first job out of college, absolutely. When you get into like, you've been a researcher for 6 years and you have a master's degree and you're, applying, you're getting more into CV land there, in detailing all of the information. Those are mostly reserved for academia. If there's anyone interested in career in academia, CVs are longer and much more detail. An employer just really wants that broad overview. They want to know education, relevant experience, what are the skills you're going to bring. So they really just want to see that general picture. So keeping it to one page is to your advantage. I heard a statistic within the past year, resumes or hiring managers or HR managers spend about 10 seconds on your resume on that first initial read, right? They're just scanning to see, if they don't have an applicant tracking software already, they're just scanning to see, do you meet the criteria? So you want to get filtered into that. Yeah, I meet the criteria pile to get a closer, more in-depth look, to get a better read. But a lot of times at really big organizations or, even at career fairs, right, where you're handing a resume and it's maybe a quicker interaction, you really want to showcase and snapshot and make that recruiter say, oh, I'm coming back to this resume later. I'm following up with this candidate. So that's the power of that single page. Like, here's who I am. Here's what I'm about. Here's how I've done it in the past. So if you need tips or tricks in order to fit everything on one page, there are some margin tricks, there's some font tricks. That would be a great time to go and see a peer advisor, because if you're having trouble fitting it on one page, it's either we're not making great use of the page, or maybe you have too much information and we need to pare down and really get to the details that an employer would want to know.
And another thing I just want to add, when you go see a peer advisor, please bring a copy of the resume printed out, no matter what it looks like or how long it is at that point. Just print it out so that way they can write on it. And you can actually have a copy of that to hold. Don't bring your laptop and edit your resume right there, because these are oftentimes there'll be people waiting, and the longer that you're spending on like editing right there, the less you're listening to the peer advisor and the longer it's going to take. So just print it out.
Good advice. Other questions or resume rumors? Yeah. How do you format a cover letter? Sorry? Oh, you have a myth that we could debunk. Okay. Okay. So formatting a cover letter, you want it to look very much like a business letter, right? So you want to put the employer contact information. Actually, we have a worksheet on it. Could you guys pass that one around? This shows essentially the business letter format. So starting with the date and then addressing it to the individual that you're writing to. If you don't have an HR manager's name or someone specific to address it to, you want to put the name of the company or organization, and then their address. Even if you're sending it via email, like, it's okay, just plug in that company's address, and then addressing it to Mr. or Mrs. or Dr. or Professor. If you don't have a name, again, it's appropriate to say, like, dear hiring manager. To whom it may concern is a little outdated. We kind of like avoid that one now. I do. Oh, we have another. All right. Conflicting resume. Yeah. See? All right. So you may get a resume review from someone who's like, yeah, to whom it may concern is good. You may get, so that really becomes then your preference choice. These are all your documents. That's the real powerful thing. They're yours to craft, and we can give best practices and guidelines. At the end of the day, you're going to go with the word choice that's best for you, or you tell your individual story via these documents. What's our myth?
So I've always been told that like the first sentence is something like I'm writing to inform you that I'm like just applying for this job or whatever. But more and more I'm seeing that it should be more personalized and more like a book and less formal. Is that true or?
So this is a changing trend, right? Yeah, people are getting braver with cover letters. They're making them more personalized. You may be the type of person who wants to like go with that and have that foundation, like I'm writing to inform you about this information. If you're applying to a company to which that would appeal to their audience, like let's say you know that you're writing to a recruiter who's more formal and traditional, then, certainly. Or if you're applying for a position within Lockheed Martin and you're like, okay, I know this is a really more traditional foundational company. Yeah, maybe sticking with a standardized approach is better. If you're writing to Google, you might want to start your cover letter with something interesting and engaging. So kind of like a hook. There are great examples of this on career advising websites like the Muse. It's a great career snapshot website that I recommend you all subscribe to. It gives really neat career tidbits and information. And it's just something that appears in your inbox when you least expect it. And it's, but occasionally they'll come out with one of the trends in cover letters. And yeah, we're seeing that more and more. I'm an advocate of that, but
I was just gonna say, I'd still include the position you're doing, make sure that's in there. But yeah, I don't, making it like a hook and interesting, like think about how many resumes and cover letters or like recruiters looking at. If they all start with the same sentence, it gets a little dull. So that different sentence might just catch them, kind of thing.
so we are at 6. Yeah, one last question.
I just have one last question. Considering a lot of like undergrads, we don't technically have a degree yet. I've been told by like some people that you can put like relevant courses that you've like completed because you don't actually have a degree, like depending on what you're applying to. Like I've taken like this, and this that kind of relate to whatever it is I'm trying to apply. Like, is that like reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. That can be a great way to showcase for an employer what kind of experiences you have had. So if you've taken statistics within your, mathematics degree, go ahead and list that under relevant courses. And there's an example of that under the education section on the handout that's attached to this handshake event. So you can see how people have showcased that. You can showcase that as a separate subsection, but if you'd like more advising, I recommend coming into the peer advising office. If you haven't graduated yet, you can put, your bachelor's of science degree expected in 2019 or 2021. Yeah. Oh, and we got a quick plug before you guys go.
Just so getting second opinions, and how do you know what an employer wants? How do you know what this company is like? Are they relaxed? Are they super formal? How do you figure this out? Well, alumni of JHU are usually super open to helping out, and then we have a website called Go Hop Online, and it's specifically alumni who want to help students that are currently here, and they're from all different companies, from big names to small names. So I would say I definitely look at that. It's kind of like LinkedIn for only Hopkins people. So
I just have something to add on that. You can actually request a mentorship from an alumni, and make sure if you write like a message to them, it's appropriate and professional. But I actually had an alumni as my mentor, and she helped me like go through informational interviews and found me like other resources for people that I could talk to about jobs. So it was very helpful. Highly recommend.
And you did that through Go Hop Online?
Yeah, Go Hop Online. You can request a mentor. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming and taking time out of your day to talk about your career.
I think we all should do this together.
I know, this is fun.
Oh, did they ask any questions up here?
I looked. I didn't
They
see
didn't.
them.
Bye, Ian. Bye, Jason. They joined us. It was good.
Yeah.
Oh, if you see chairs that have a white back, if you could grab them and just put them around the little tables out there, that would be fantastic.